Hey everyone, and welcome to Rambling Reviews, where we analyze different types of media and or their cultural relevance. My name's Christian, and this is Modern Family, Season 1, Episode 10, Undeck the Halls. This episode was written by Dan O'Shannon, directed by Randall Einhorn, and has a few guest stars. We have Frederick Charles Willard, who we're going to be seeing very soon here, who portrays the recurring role of Phil's father, and also had played Robert Barone's father in the show Everybody Loves Raymond. That's what I recognize him for, at least. He's had other roles here, of course, in things like Spinal Tap, A Mighty Wind, Best in Show, The Anchorman Show, or the Anchorman movies, I should say. But we also have a actor by the name of Brian T. Finney, who I'm going to be pointing out when we get to him. He had previously been on $1 Million Baby, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and Reno 911 Miami, as well as something called Paperman. Not really familiar with what Paperman is, though I've heard of a lot of those others. And we also have a character by the name, Jeremy Scott Johnson, who is going to be playing a character we'll see later, I'll point out as well. He also did work on the show Community, which is a show that I very much plan on seeing at some point in the future and doing a rambling review series on that as well. But with that in mind, I just want to say off the bat, before we get into this here, I love Christmas. I've made it very prevalent or very apparent, I should say, throughout a lot of my content. Anytime that I talk about it, I make sure to do something Christmas related with the channel every year. I love the whole Christmas season. For me, it is very much the most wonderful time of the year. I know there are unfortunately people that it is not, which is very sad, but I love everything about Christmas, including the Christmas specials like this one we're going to get into here. And one of the things that I think is important about Christmas movies, Christmas shows, all that good stuff, is that not only are they fun and they're enjoyable and they have like the fun parts of Christmas, but it's even better when they have a beautiful message. And I think that this show does a really good job in that, in a way that kind of only this show can really address. So without further ado, let's get into it. We open with the Dumfies video chatting with Phil's dad as they're all discussing, essentially, they're just kind of thanking him for the sweaters, which they are not really thankful for. They're showing off this ornament that he gave. They're doing the typical family chat kind of thing. It becomes very apparent once, everything is kind of very sugary sweet, kind of like, very Christmas card, the way that the family's acting and everything. But then Claire sees a burn hole, for lack of a word to call it, a burn spot, a burn mark on the couch, and immediately assumes that somebody's smoking. So we go from this like sugary sweet, very generic Christmas card vibe that they all have to everyone kind of getting mad, turning on each other. We have this bit where Haley's even trying, like, about to take off the sweater, and Claire's like, Claire or Heather, Haley, keep that ugly sweater on. All that stuff, right? Showing that, of course, they don't really like the sweaters. And it was, kind of a facade. But, we're kind of seeing that typical family dynamic being played for laughs, of course. We'll get back to the Dumfies in a minute here, but first, we have to take a look at the Pritchett household, where Jay is showing Manny for the first time in his life Miracle on 34th Street. I haven't seen it either. I know it's a classic. It's one of the few Christmas classics that I haven't seen. I've seen It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen like all of those incredible films, but I haven't seen Miracle on 34th Street. Something about it just never really like appealed to me. I don't know. Eventually, one of these days I'll see it, but haven't checked it out yet. But while all seems to be going well, there's a jump scare of this creature. We find out that Manny reveals to him that essentially this is part of a prank tradition that they have in Colombia, where Manny had gotten a fake, a joke copy, he says, off the internet, I don't think this is like a real thing you can do, but I'm sure you can edit, things to like a creepypasta kind of thing. Or I'm sorry, what were those old things called, like screamers or something, where like a scream face will just like come out of nowhere or something. I don't know, but regardless, definitely something like that. And here we set up the conflict with the Pritchett's, where Jay, understandably, being very set in his old ways and all that, is not too keen on this, Colombian tradition of doing pranks. And it becomes pretty apparent quickly that he's not necessarily too keen on Colombian traditions in general for Christmas. He wants Christmas to be his way and doesn't really want it to change that much. So that'll be something that we'll get to explore later here. Now, with Mitch and Cam, we have kind of a double whammy of setting up conflicts here, because first we have Cam and Mitch run into Cameron's old caroling group, which were originally called the Greensleevers, now having kicked Cameron out, are called the New Greensleevers. Such a, creative name change, of course. And this guy on the right here in the right image is Andrew, played by Jeremy Scott Johnson, as mentioned before. So we have that little bit kind of brought up here. But interestingly, we also have a moment where, so Cam and Mitch are taking Lily to have her first, picture with Santa and all that. One thing that I do want to just point out on this real quick is I feel like when people do these things where they have like their kid, when they're not even a year old yet, do something like this, or hey, I don't think she's a year old yet. They, when they're an infant and they have them do something like this, it's really more about the parent. And I understand like you want to make this memory and everything, but it's not something the kid's gonna remember. Like, I don't know, it kind of feels like a waste. It's like when people like bring their kid to like an amusement park when they're an infant, and it's like they're not experiencing any of this. They're like dead to the world because they can't process anything going on here. Like, what are you doing? But regardless, point is, they take her to see Santa, and they have this guy who is clearly like just getting on shift to be Santa, getting his fake beard on, as opposed to a guy before who looked a lot like what you'd expect Santa to look like. And Mitch basically complains about it and says how they're going to wait until Fat Santa comes back to get the picture with Santa. They don't want this guy. And I mean, this guy does definitely look like a Santa that smells like beef jerky and sits on a throne of lies, if you get me. So I can't exactly blame them for being that way about it. And now, getting back to the Dumfies, Claire and Phil are confronting the kids about how this burn spot ended up on the couch. And they are essentially accusing all of them that someone must have smoked, someone must have done something, to which they all say none of them had done it. And the situation just escalates further and further, as now Phil is, Claire a little bit too, but Phil especially is, accusing them of being liars as well, all these different things, and saying that, all right, tell you what, nobody's going to confess, Christmas is canceled. And in a moment, and image that I think is actually kind of, powerful and dramatic here, we have Phil completely following through, taking down the tree, and just, like, literally just being like, Christmas is canceled, getting rid of all the decorations, all the everything, no presents, no anything, Christmas is canceled. This is what we're going to do until somebody comes forward. And if no one comes forward, we're not having Christmas. Now, do I think this is extreme and unnecessary? 100%. Do I think it's funny and works for this kind of show? 100%. We'll see how this, envelops more, and we're going to have some kind of, twists and turns with this, but it's, pretty cool, pretty interesting. It's a very different setup that I wouldn't expect for really any kind of show, even one like this. But speaking of things you might not necessarily accept, as Mitch and Cam are getting ready to leave and packing up their car, we actually have the Santa that they said was too skinny, Mitch specifically, that he had said was too skinny, and it turns out it ended up costing him his job. After he helps him and Mitch offers to give him some money for his troubles. Basically, we have this kind of funny moment as the Santa, who introduces himself as Scott, and this is the guy that Brian T. Finney plays, by the way, just kind of mentions that, he is living out of his car, is divorced, has been bouncing around different, jobs and stuff, and struggling to keep a steady job, and all these different things. So Mitch and Cam offer for him to eat dinner with them, to have Christmas Eve dinner with them, and we'll see where that goes from here. Meanwhile, with the Pritchett's, as Jay is learning more about the traditions that Manny wants to do for a Colombian Christmas, if you will, Jay is very against all of them. Manny explains, and Gloria does as well, explains how they shoot off fireworks, and it's actually the baby Jesus that, brings presents as opposed to Santa Claus, and all these different things. They have these little cheese fritters for them to eat, which is a Colombian tradition. Jay just kind of puts his foot down and says, all right, here's the thing. Maybe we can look into that stuff, next year. But right now, let's just have Christmas the way we're supposed to have Christmas. Ergo, of course, stick to his traditions and not incorporate new ones at all. Now, this is something we're going to kind of delve into more, as it's kind of the message of this whole thing as is. But the reality is, everybody has different traditions that they do, even in the same country. I know plenty of people that have different traditions. My friends and such have different traditions than what my family does, for example. Everybody has different things that they do. There are people who will stay up late and, open one present on Christmas Eve. Manny here explains that they open all their presents on a Christmas Eve and stay up till morning. And I actually went and fact-checked some of this stuff, and it turns out that a lot of the things that they mention are real things in Colombia. One of the things they leave out is how they start Christmas on the 7th, but the fireworks are real, the whole baby Jesus thing is real, all that stuff. And I think that starting Christmas on the 7th isn't really that much different than how, Catholics will do, the Advent, and they'll even do, there are people, you have those, Advent calendars and stuff, so there's things like that. But the reality is everybody has different traditions that they do for holidays and things of that nature, regardless of your nationality or anything like that. And it's really cool to kind of be able to incorporate those rather than be closed-minded about it. But we'll get to that. But Manny recognizes Jay's closed-mindedness and just kind of, storms off saying, I know what maybe means. Maybe you'll incorporate my traditions next year. It's like you're trying to take away my whole Christmas. And he kind of storms off in a way, and, it makes sense. I think Manny is completely in his right here, understanding that Jay is really against his traditions. Oh, fireworks. They also do fireworks. And one thing that I will say about that, Jay seems to think it's weird to do fireworks, but, I hear fireworks going off around Christmas time, or especially New Year's and after New Year's, and God, they don't end with the fireworks. But hey, that's a whole other thing. But getting back to the plot with the Dumfies, Alex, Haley, and Luke are all discussing basically, all right, who actually did this? How do we get Christmas back? What do we do? All this kind of stuff, right? And, Luke and Haley, everybody is like, none of us did it, right? So Alex comes up with the idea, all right, let's do the Spartacus kind of thing, where one of us says that we did it, takes ownership, and then everybody else will step up as well. So they tell Luke to do this, and Luke does so in an effort to, of course, save Christmas for everyone and get everybody, expecting everyone to his sisters to stand by him and all that. But when he does, he comes to Claire and Phil and tells them that he did it. He says he was playing with matches and he, accidentally burned the couch. Of course, Claire is upset by this and they're all wanting to have a talk, her and Phil, but Phil does also go out to get the Christmas tree back. But, you know, they're asking like, why didn't you say anything before? It's like, I don't know. And then he kind of turns to Alex and he's like, come on, guys. Like, what do you want from us? We didn't do anything. And he's like, well, I didn't. They said if I confess and they like also confess too, and you'd be proud of all of us. So they're all, arguing again about the fact that none of them did it. And as Phil's coming back in, he's like, oh, what? Nobody did it again? Like, everyone's innocent again? All right, that's fine. Christmas is still canceled, and there's like Easter and other holidays. Watch your back. So with Mitch and Cam having Scott over, he's of course, kind of just not reminiscing, like telling him a little bit about himself and his life. And it comes up that he had the nickname of the Hulk as he has a bad temper, which, things just kind of go from bad to worse here as Mitch is busy, kind of developing this swing for Lily, and yet we have this bit where he's basically Scott's talking about his anger issues. He pulls out a knife to cut something off the thing, and Mitch keeps wanting to confess. Mitch and or Cam keep wanting to say something about what happened, and yet we just have this moment where they keep having to kind of shove their foot in their mouth and just not say what they want to say because they're worried he's going to hurt them or worse. And I do wonder if the idea of Scott here and everything was it all inspired by, the idea of a bad Santa or anything like that, those movies. But regardless, we have Jay show up, where he is giving them their early Christmas gift, Christmas Eve gifts, which are new pajamas for them to have for the next morning when they all meet up or whatever. And, Mitch just kind of mocks him about it. He's like, oh, you're still keeping traditions alive, I see. And he's like, well, someone has to. I mean, I got two, as Jay puts it, I have two Colombians in the house who are trying to turn Christmas into Cinco de Mayo, which he says de Mayo. And as they mention it to him, that's Mexican. And of course, to him, it's all the same. So, but, we're seeing, of course, that yes, Jay is ignorant about this and everything, but also, he's very not. He's very set in his old ways. He wants his traditions. He wants Christmas his way. But as Mitch and Jay kind of explain to him, look, that's the beautiful thing. Like, there are traditions that I miss and stuff. You'll always, Cameron explains, you'll always have these like beautiful memories and stuff as he shares some rather strange Christmas traditions he has from growing up on a farm, being an old country boy that Cameron is. But you'll have these memories and you'll have these things, but maybe it's time to make new memories, new traditions, things like that. And he says, after, we have our own traditions and everything. And as he says that, Scott comes back out dressed like this, saying, so who's ready for the swing? Now, of course, he's referring to the swing that they're designing, that they're getting ready for Lily here. But very obvious the kind of joke and stereotype they're playing into here. I'll leave it at that. At the same time, Gloria talks to Manny about the whole situation and basically just tries to explain it from Jay's perspective, and that Manny kind of comes up with the idea, all right, so then the best gift I could give him is to give him the Christmas the way that he wants it to be. And of course, Gloria kind of encourages him on that. And, the thing I'll say on that is, I understand where they're coming from with both of these things where, both are kind of at an impasse wanting to keep their traditions. We'll get into a little bit more later, but I really think the answer to this is just to incorporate each other's traditions. You can still have the classic Christmas stuff and, the opening presents on Christmas morning, things like that. You can still have the Innocente, you can still have the, all the other different aspects, and just kind of mix the things together. And we'll get to that a little bit here more, but we'll get to that. That's kind of the heart of this episode, and I really love it, and I don't want to like spoil it. So anyway, we'll get to it. But first, back to the Dumfies. We have Claire and Phil kind of discussing how they could potentially go back on the whole getting like canceling Christmas thing, and while still seeming like, they stand by their word and their kids won't like lose any kind of, not respect for them, but think that they won't think that they won't stand by their word or anything of that nature. But as they're discussing, because even though they're adults, like they still want to have Christmas too. I mean, Christmas isn't just about kids, it's about everyone. It's about love and family and togetherness, and it's just a really beautiful thing. But as they're figuring all this out, Alex actually shows up and confesses that she brought a cigarette home from school that she found, and I must have accidentally burned the couch when she was trying it, so she didn't like it or anything. And of course, Phil and Claire are both kind of impressed by her coming forward like this, taking the fall and everything here, and being honest about the situation, but also, not happy about the fact that she's smoking or anything like that. But the important thing here, especially to Phil, is Christmas is back on, as he invites the whole family down. And in a very subtle moment, they ask, oh, what happened? And he's like, doesn't matter. Point is, Christmas is back on. And I love it because he's not like throwing Alex under the bus or anything. It's like, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. What matters for you, what matters for all of us is Christmas is back on. However, with Mitch and Cam dealing with a potentially angry Santa, Scott is basically continuing to kind of explain how he used to be in the war. He's a military vet, and unfortunately a lot of homeless people and struggling people are vets because we don't take good enough care of our vets at all in this country. People will pander about it and say like, oh, we gotta respect and honor our vets and stuff, and yet we have like the programs in place to actually help them doesn't help, and it's really sad, and there's all kind of issues. But, we do definitely need to take better care of our vets. But regardless, Scott explains how he used to be on a firing squad. He says, oh, it's not really that bad. And we had, someone had a blank, so no one knew who actually shot the guy. And stuff like that. And we're just seeing these more and more things that, like, this dude might have some violent tendencies. We're not really sure what's up. But, as they're getting ready to just kind of let him go and, let sleeping dogs lie, essentially, the carolers show up. The new green sleevers show up, which kind of sets off Cam. And, he's getting ready he says he's going to turn on the sprinklers, and, he's going to do what he can to just mess things up for them. Scott talks to them about the importance of forgiveness. As he even says, I mean, honestly, the best thing I did all day was forgiving you guys for getting me fired. So we see that, like, this whole time he knew. And he had already forgiven them. He wasn't planning on doing anything violent to them. He wasn't anything. He was just trying to be better. He wanted to forgive them, and it's a beautiful message there. But we're not done with the beautiful messages, although of course we have another funny moment, and we'll get to that here. So Cam goes out to do the right thing and basically tell them, hey, I know it's not an accident you guys are here, but I just want to tell you all, you sound great. Even without me. He doesn't say without me, but he's thinking it. And Merry Christmas. To which the leader, Andrew, just says like, wow, even your apology's off key, which it's not really an apology, but regardless, this sets off Scott to become an angry Santa, as he then decks the guy, Andrew, and runs. Whereas Cam and Mitch are like, wait, what about forgiveness? And as Scott's running away, he says, you were nice, he was naughty. So, you have that kind of funny moment there. But after the funny moment, we have a sweet moment as we begin to wrap things up here. Now we have this moment where Jay comes back home and Gloria and Manny are doing yet another Colombian tradition where this seems to make Jay just absolutely lose it. He's like, all right, from now on in America, we do American things, and is just really being uncharacteristically cruel and even more close minded than usual about the whole thing, causing, of course, Manny and Gloria to be very upset about the whole event. Where then Jay turns around and says, Innocente! And like they're like, "Ah, Jay, you got us," kind of thing. And he's like, "What?" He's like, "By the way, you guys know how hard it is to find fireworks or Christmas, and or find fireworks on Christmas Eve." And it's just this beautiful moment where it's like, "All right, Jay, you're getting it, man. Like you're really getting it." And it's so beautiful to see. There's a lot of talk about how, or at least I should say, like I've seen people discuss about this show that essentially Jay doesn't have any real character development. This idea effectively that he is seen as like allowed to change as a person and make progress like from before the show started, but that in the actual show itself he doesn't, he's still very like kind of staunch, conservative, stuck in his old ways kind of thing. And I think that this is just a really good example that that isn't always the case. In fact, I would go so far to say that, well, this is a really good example that that isn't the case. That in fact he does get to grow and change in things like this, and it's just really sweet. And we'll get to that sentiment a little bit more specifically here in a moment. But first, he thought the Dumphy story was all resolved, but as they're all having Christmas morning together, that it's no longer been canceled, they notice a burning, like they notice the couch burning, the same spot that it was burning before, and they find out an ornament on the tree was causing, the sun was hitting it the right way, that it was causing this hole to be burned into the arm of the sofa. So no one did it, including not Alex. So they ask her, why did you do this? Why did you want to take the fall? And she's like, I didn't want the whole family to lose out on Christmas. So, they all think it's, of course, really sweet and everything. And it is. But, it's also like, no, I mean, there is no, it's just really sweet. We have this funny moment though where they basically kind of call Phil out on overreacting and how he called them liars and everything, and that it just wasn't good, and essentially that and Phil's like, hey, I made a mistake, and I like that he owns up to it, because at first he tries to be like, well, I didn't, he tries to kind of like justify it, but then it's like, no, I made a mistake, and that's okay because I can make up for this by taking you all to Italy. And we just see this like look on Claire's face. She's like, what? Like, not like, God no. Like, let's not like have some like major vacation because of this or anything. Once again, these people are very wealthy. The idea of going to another country like that being like a minor inconvenience or something that they can all just easily afford is insane to me, but that's how it is. But with all of the stories, all the little side plots here revealed or wrapped up, we have this beautiful moment as we see the whole family together at Jay's house having Christmas dinner together, and Jay is narrating essentially about how traditions can in fact change over time, and the beauty of this family and all this is you can learn to appreciate others traditions and make new traditions and all this stuff, and we have this beautiful shot as we see the outside of Jay's house with fireworks being shot off above it, and clearly having incorporated the Colombian tradition of the fireworks as well. And it's just a really beautiful, message, and just that whole thing of all of these traditions being, you know kept up and changing, and just appreciating your family, and all of this is just, it's so beautiful to me. It's such a beautiful, this is one of the episodes I saw where it's like, okay, I really love the show and I have to talk about it. This is just that, I mean, it's just, it's so true, and it's so beautiful to have that. And I think it's something that, while it is a very real thing many families experience, it's something that really only a show like this could properly explore and showcase, and things of that nature. And it's just, it's beautiful. It's such a good message for Christmas and family and togetherness. It's kind of similar to the first episode's message, sure, but this is specifically in regards to, like, family traditions and Christmas traditions and all that, and holiday traditions in general. And it's just, it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. And we end on this note where, of course, after the heartfelt message, we have, a funny thing where we have Jay and Manny watching Cameron having directed everybody singing as a choir, essentially singing Christmas carols, when that little thing, that monster creature that Manny had before, pops up out of nowhere and freaks him out. And it's, one last Innocente, if you will. And you have that little funny moment. It ends on just like all the episodes. But yeah, no, I think this is a very, very good episode. 100%, I would say, encapsulates kind of the meaning of Christmas, if you will. Just that, again, the family togetherness, the reality that we all have our own, traditions and things of that nature, but we can hold space to make new ones and incorporate other people's other family, and whoever we're spending Christmas with, incorporate their traditions along with ours. And it's just really beautiful. So, of course, we have the whole thing of, forgiveness with, the Scott Santa. We had all of that, and we had the message with, I don't really know if I'd say there was a message with the Phil Dunphy thing. It was sweet how, Alex is willing to take the fall for everyone like that, but I don't really know what the message there would be. I would say that was kind of more there for laughs, but yeah. Either way, great episode overall. And honestly, even if you like, if you're someone who like only watches like, Christmas themed stuff at Christmas time, as I normally do, but when I'm going through a series like this, I'll make an exception. Or if you're like me and you really enjoy Christmas specials, this is a great special to watch during Christmas time. Even if you don't want to watch the show of Modern Family itself, but if you do, I think you'll get a really good feel for what the show is in and of itself anyway. So either way, though, and as always, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like. And if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.